Thank you all for joining us today for DE Discussions. I am Brad Denison, and I am being joined by Taylor T.G. She is an Enrollment Management Counselor at U of H Clear Lake. She's working for the Office of Admissions. And she's also working on a master's degree in Instructional Design and Technology at U of H Clear Lake. Also of note, she holds a BA from Bryn Mawr College in Philosophy with Sociology, Art History, and Africana Studies concentrations. So Taylor, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Brad.
I know I kind of touched base a little bit about like the factual information about you right now, but if you would give us a little bit of background, like how did you get to where you are at now and where are you going?
Yes. So in my undergraduate studies, I always worked within some part of admissions or the student transition experience, right? So when I was at Bryn Mawr College, I was actually a Thrive mentor. So I was helping students sort of transition into the Bryn Mawr College culture. And that kind of drove me towards wanting to work in admissions in some way when I left Bryn Mawr. I've been a graphic designer for over 8 years. And so I wanted to come into admissions and sort of shake it up. I wanted to add in a design perspective into how we're interacting with students because I find that, marketing is the biggest thing. We need students to feel like they're being engaged, they're being motivated, but I feel like there's a visual aspect to that and a design aspect that really heightens it. And so in my position as an enrollment management counselor at UH Clear Lake, I decided to also get my master's in instructional design and technology at the same time. I thought I would blend everything all together. And so I've kind of been using the background for graphic design to inform my instructional design skills. And then I've brought that over to the Office of Admissions and I'm trying to create these interactive or immersive experiences where we're engaging students while they're still prospective students and sort of encouraging them to even want to enroll, but to feel like they're a part of the campus culture. So that's just a little bit about my background and what I've been doing and where I'm hoping to kind of go with it.
So I like this. So when I think about something like instructional design, it's a captured audience, right? It's those that are attending that class, they're attending that training session, and they are there for a reason. So
Yeah.
I guess first question is, what made you go, let me apply this controlled environment project to the chaos of the unknown to introducing potential students to what you're using?
So a little bit of my motivation when I was first starting off in my instructional design technology program, we were doing project management, right? So we're talking about having stakeholders, we're talking about having these meetings where you're informing people of what the project is. And so I sort of thought of admissions as a project. Students are coming in and they have a set of tasks they need to complete in order to be admitted to the university. But in there's a way that we need to be communicating with them, a way that we need to be showing that we can support them and that we're there on their behalf. So I kind of think that really sparked it for me. I was like, okay, how can we make admissions more fun, more entertaining, and also just engaging? So I wanted to have these students feeling like they belong. I feel like student belonging is really important to the student success experience at a university. And so I thought of, okay, let's start with webinars. So I said, well, webinars are something we use all the time for training faculty and staff on new skills. But what if we could kind of merge what faculty is doing and we can bring it over to what the students are doing and we can say, hey, okay, these students want to talk to faculty, these faculty members, they want to talk to students. And so I was like, okay, let's start a webinar series. And then I use my graphic design background to design, the Zoom backgrounds and have the chat set up a certain way and all of these things, the visual elements of it. But then I was like, okay, the instructional design component is that everyone here can get a skill. Everyone can learn something, right? So then I was training the faculty on, okay, this is how we should talk to the students in the webinar. This is how to use Zoom. This is how to, get into the space. And then I'm telling the students, when I'm out and I'm recruiting at events and I'm telling the students, okay, we have this webinar experience, this information session that's coming up where you'll get to actually interact with faculty and ask them all of your questions directly. And so they get to learn, but the faculty also get to learn what is it that prospective students want to know about your program. Most faculty members don't have that script immediately available because they're used to dealing with admitted students who you already know this is what they're here for. But dealing with a prospective student who's kind of still up in the air and you're kind of doing a little bit of persuading them and trying to get them to understand what it is that you're going to offer them. What can you add to their academic career? it was a really, I would say, eye-opening experience for everyone that was involved. And then it went on to me doing handouts and informational guides and modules and little games and things like that to just keep the students engaged when they're still trying to figure out, is this the school for me? But I think that it hinders a lot of universities if you don't kind of start thinking that way, where you're like, okay, I've got to sell myself to this student. It's not always the student having have the perfect application to sell to us. I think it goes both ways.
I like it. And so you talk about webinars, you talk about Zoom, and then you're talking about handouts. So is some of this also in face-to-face environment?
Yeah, so some of this is in face-to-face environment. So because I do have that recruitment aspect to my position where I'm actually out at high schools and I'm out at community colleges, educating them on what University of Houston Clear Lake has to offer, a lot of the time I am creating infographics or even QR codes that may lead to a module on Articulate or something where the student can actually say, oh, I have something tangible, it's fun, it's engaging, even an interactive checklist where you're keeping track of your admissions materials. But these are the sort of things that students want to interact and use, because it's like, okay, this is keeping UH Clear Lake in the front of my mind. They have all this fun stuff for me to do. But before it was just kind of like handing out a view book, this paper pamphlet, take this, learn about us. But I think it's important that we kind of switch it up and add in that technology component.
So I kind of want to talk about like the design of what you've been working towards, but it's interesting to me because you're talking about doing something that I feel is very accessible digitally. Have you had much success in taking it to the face-to-face version?
Yeah, I would say that, of course, we're still working it out because the Office of Admissions, this is new for UH Clear Lake, sort of having this engagement with these prospective students on these platforms that we're using. So when we're going face to face, we're more so promoting it, explaining what we're doing in the digital sphere, engaging student interest, trying to see, okay, is this something that's actually viable if we go ahead and get this going and implement it? I would say that the face-to-face aspect, when I do finally see the students, it's more so, I guess, the promotion side of it, but also we're trying to see if we can do this in a live setting as well. So we've done the webinar, but can we also have these informational sessions in person? Can we have it be hybrid? Can we have a room where we're, of course, having faculty interact with students, or maybe even having, I've seen some classrooms where you're using like games and quizzes throughout the presentation, but then we still have that Zoom aspect where maybe students who are at home can still interact with it. So we're just trying to figure out the best way to deliver it to everyone all at once.
Is there anything that any of the students that have gone through the process and become not prospective, but actual U of H Clear Lake students, that they have come back and they have said that this thing was really great, that this was what I really like admired, or this is what really hooked me into this? Or on the flip side of the coin, is there something that you're using in this process that you're really, really proud of?
I would say that I'm really proud of some of the modules that I've created online for students to sort of learn the admissions process. And I'm also really proud of my handouts that I've been sending to students. So we do have a website. And if you take the time to, click through every folder and every link, you eventually get to the piece of information you're looking for. But my students have always come back and they have rave reviews like, oh my goodness, this handout was so amazing. I was able to figure out how to pay my application fee in 5 seconds versus, having to, go through the entire website and look for an instructional packet. Even some students saying, oh, I learned how to use e-services because I created an Articulate mini lesson showing this is what every single tile of e-services has behind it. This is where you find your transcripts. This is where you change your email address, things like that, where instead of them spending hours doing it on their own, they have this guide that they can walk them through, and they can search through the site and they can type in what they're trying to do. And then boom, there it is. Those are the steps for how to complete the task. So I've heard a lot of positive things. A lot of students say that it helps them. They wouldn't know what to do if I didn't have this, or I would have been browsing the website for hours. So they're always very appreciative, and they're always sending me thank you emails. I even get calls where students are like, oh my goodness, so I finally registered for my classes. I just wanted to come back and tell you, like, this was amazing and I wouldn't have been able to do it without you. So it's really nice to see that it has a positive impact on the students once they're
Love
admitted.
it. And so real quick to reconnect with everybody, Brad Denison here, DE Discussions, and I am talking with Taylor TG. She is Enrollment Management Counselor for U of H Clear Lake. We've been talking about how she's taken some of these general ideas that maybe we apply in the classroom around instructional design and technology and has applied it to the enrollment process. And I am talking to you because I'm so fascinated at this idea of capturing that group, that demographic of students, and bravo to you. So this sounds like something that this is your brainchild. This is what you came up with. This is what you pitched to administrators above you. Did you have any pushback as you were trying to explain your vision?
Of course, there's always pushback because it's new and people don't know if it's worth the time and effort, right? So I kind of did take this as my brainchild and I took a lot of time and I used my own resources and even after work, working late on the weekends, just trying to make sure that it will stand. So I had some help, of course, once I had it all up and rolling. So I had my other admissions staff kind of help me out as far as moderating, the webinars or even administering some of the different digital resources that I had created. But I kind of wanted to make sure it was perfect. And I am a little bit of a perfectionist. So I said, if they're going to trust me to come up with a webinar series and they're going to trust me to, talk to staff and get them on Zoom and tell them, okay, this is what we're doing. I was creating presentations left and right to make sure that everyone was aware, okay, this is your role. This is what we're doing here. And so once I had that down, I think that everyone had a little bit more confidence in me. They were like, okay, she really knows what she's doing. She's not just making this up. And so the pushback was, it hadn't been done before. There wasn't a template. There wasn't anything that I could show to say, hey, look, it's happening over here. And I could have probably researched to see if, well, of course, we're all familiar with webinars and things. We know how they operate in general. But from the admission side of it, it's like, okay, what are they showing up to learn? Okay, what is the faculty going to be saying? And so I was kind of, hesitant even myself sometimes, like, is this actually going to work? But it worked. And I think that's because I was so confident that this is what needs to happen. This is how we change our numbers. This is how we change our interaction with the community. This is how people learn who we are. So I think that confidence is really what pushed it along. But of course, there was pushback because, everyone's trying to figure out what is this and what is she talking about?
Everything changes so fast that sometimes you really got to take that gamble on a new idea. And so it's
Yeah.
great that that's worked out for you. In regards to the faculty participating with you, what has their reaction been like to the impact?
They were so excited and everyone was saying, oh, I can't wait to do this again. Let me know when the next webinar is. Are you going to have one next semester? Are we going to do this again? Is it possible that, even some of them went to the point of, hey, I enjoy coming to the webinar. If you ever want me to come to a recruitment event with you and talk to students, at the table or at the recruitment event, I'm willing to come out. It's because I think faculty for the longest, they weren't aware of how admissions, advisors or enrollment management counselors, how we do our job, how we get these students to their classroom. So it's important for them to kind of see, oh, this is what's happening on the admission side. I can actually add something to that. And it's important for the admission side to see, okay, we can actually help the faculty out a little bit and give them more of a platform to talk about their programs, especially some of our under-enrolled programs that don't get the spotlight as often. So it was really important, I think, for both parties, both faculty members and for admissions to kind of work together and see where we can enhance both offices, both departments.
Fantastic. Teamwork, dreamwork, etc. Right.
Exactly.
So I don't want to oversimplify it, but because I have mentioned instructional design a couple times, right? And I'm not assuming that you're coming at this from maybe not an ADDIE model standpoint, analyze, design, develop, implement, evaluate, etc., or even something more simple like backwards design, right? But you've
Yeah.
got to have like some sort of circular process, I guess, of what you're putting together and what you're evaluating.
Yeah,
Have you
that's
come
true.
up with something on your own, or are you using some sort of tool?
Yeah, so in one of my classes, I actually did create a model, which was focused on analysis, implementation, curation, and then a sort of innovative aspect where you're revamping it, but you're using sort of all the feedback that you get at every single step to kind of help you, right? So when you're building your objectives, there's going to be feedback given to you by colleagues saying, okay, maybe we should add this, maybe we should add that. I think everything should be noted. I think all suggestions should be noted. And so that's something that I was doing with the webinar series, for instance, each step, even down to, does this flyer work? I'm saving all that feedback so that way the next time I make the next flyer, okay, I'll add this, I'll add that. And so it's a constant just revamping the product, making sure that it's going to work. But of course I use like the classic instructional design models, ADDIE, even down to backwards design. We're always going to have some objectives perspective somewhere, and we're going to have that process of sort of analyzing what's working, what's not working, and then implementing it a couple times, sometimes even at smaller scales. Even when I was talking to the faculty and I was having those webinars with them and just presenting the information, I was taking notes like, okay, what's working? What's engaging the faculty? Do they like when I say this? Am I flipping through my PowerPoint too fast? Should I add more features in the Zoom? Should we have a pop-up poll or a quiz? So I was using those mini lessons with just people who were engaged in the process before I actually brought it and made it live, a live webinar for prospective students. So I did have that sort of, just redesign, refine it, and then get down to that perfect product that's like, okay, this is going to work. I thought of all the nooks and crannies and we're here.
So I guess my next question is then, what are some lessons you've learned through this process? And more importantly, would you do it again?
I absolutely would do it again. We are gearing up to do our next set of webinars or informational sessions, and it's under the name Learn Your Degree. So we're going to have that for the fall semester, and I'm already talking to some faculty, getting them. Some of them are coming back, so they already know what to do. And then some are new and they're excited because they've heard from their colleagues, oh, this department was a part of the webinar series. I now have time. I would like to join the webinar series, and get smart about it and join in. So I will be doing it again. I think what I've learned from the first time is that, of course, communication is key. What I would love to do is make sure that well ahead of time, everyone knows exactly what they're going to be doing. And I give faculty a chance to really perfect their presentations, because you only get that one shot, that 30-minute, session to sell your department to the students. And I think that when we have that Q&A section as well, where the students are talking directly to program chairs and department chairs, it's important that I give the faculty time to learn and understand what it is the students want to hear. So being able to communicate with them and sort of, tweak their presentations, make sure everything's good. But then on the admissions side, we have transfer advisors in there. We have academic advisors in there. We have enrollment management counselors who are giving admissions information, who are giving course descriptions and course information. It's important that we all have somewhat of, not a script, but that we know what we're saying, so we're not stepping over each other, and that we're not sending, the same link a couple times, and that everyone's addressing the student concerns in the Q&A chat. So I think that it's important to have more collaborative, training experiences along the way, and I would love to do that this time. Before, I was super excited and just trying to get it out there, but now I know, okay, let's have some department meetings. Let's all talk. Let's all make sure that we understand what we want the students to get out of it. So that's something that I've learned. I want to make sure that I increase the communication and make sure everyone's, set in stone and they've got it down, got it down pat.
So I got two more questions for you. First one, if somebody else had a idea that was educational technology based, this is the instructional tech, it's all interchangeable at this point.
Yeah.
That they wanted to apply to a more non-traditional use case like you've done. And please, I hope you take that as a compliment, because you've really done something amazing here. What advice do you have in kind of that thought process of taking something new and applying it to something more traditional?
Mhm. So I definitely believe in research and just studying what's been successful. Sometimes when you have a new idea, you have a tendency to reinvent the wheel, and that's not always necessary. Sometimes it's important to go back and study what's been successful. Go watch a TED Talk, for instance. Go watch some YouTube videos of people just talking to people or interviewing people. Sometimes I was getting most of my information from just real life cases of what is engaging to people. And then even looking at the comments on very successful videos. And I'm like, what do people ask these creators to add to their videos? Do they want captions? Do they think that the video is too slow or sped up? So I think a part of it is that definitely the analysis phase of it and just kind of analyzing what has been successful before. Whenever you're doing any new project, whether that's you're going to create a handout, a online course, or if you're going to be doing a webinar, I just go study different forms of media that are related to that. And then I just kind of take note on what's working. But then I also make sure that I'm engaging my team as well. I don't want to work in a bubble. I want other people and their expertise and whatever they have experience. And I want to ask them, hey, what do you do? Even down to talking to the faculty who are in the communications department or who are in the technology information department. what do you guys do when you're building all of this stuff for staff and faculty to use? And can you give me some tips on how to do it? So I say talk to people, figure out what people actually want to know, because that really helped me with my objectives. I'm like, what do the students want to know, and what do faculty members want to say? Okay, well then let's meet somewhere in the middle. So that was really important for me. And I think that that's the biggest thing, is just research, and then, get a good grasp on why you're doing it. Once you know the why and you know what you want to take away from it, it's so much easier to plan it.
Well, Taylor, last one is there anything that you would like to add? Did I not ask you a question you're just dying to talk about and answer on?
I think that you asked a lot of great questions, and I really appreciate you having questions that made me think myself and made me kind of revisit what I did, because now I'm even thinking, okay, what can I take from this conversation when I go into the next webinar series? But no, mostly I just want to say that admissions, it needs to be interactive and exciting. And I think that it's important for us to just kind of always promote that student belonging and motivating them to take control of learning why they want to come to your institution as well, right? So the webinar series is supposed to be an opportunity for students to dig deeper, and they have that access to faculty to learn and engage with them. It's not always about just reading a website. Sometimes it's important to reach out to the people who are there, who are in that institution, and kind of pick their brains a little bit. So that's something I think that on the institutional side, we need to make ourselves more available to the prospective students. And I think for the prospective students, always look for those opportunities where you get to ask your questions in a live format, or any sort of information session where you get to hear it from the horse's mouth.
Wonderful. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for joining us for DE Discussions. I have been chatting with Taylor T.G. She's an enrollment management counselor at U of H Clear Lake in their Office of Admissions. And she has done some amazing things to work towards improving the admissions process for their students, the potential prospective students. So, Taylor, thank you so much for your time. And I hope that you and I can have a reason to have another one of these chats again, because this has been a beautifully wonderful conversation.
Yes, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed myself, and I hope to be invited back.